Good afternoon to the media, and good afternoon to the Omaha community. Anytime there's loss of life in our community, the trauma is impactful. When the death comes from the branch in government in place to protect society, in this case the Omaha Police Department, the impact can be even more traumatic. As such, the Omaha Police Department is committed to transparency and accountability. I offer my condolences to the family and friends of 26-year-old Fernando Rodriguez Juarez and 28-year-old Jonathan Hernandez Rosales. The purpose of this press conference is to give a full investigative presentation into the double officer-involved shooting on Saturday, February 3rd at 2:05 in the morning. That took place in the parking lot of the Ex-Stasis nightclub located at 3050 L Street. The order of the press conference will be as follows. We have a critical incident video presentation where we will walk the media and the public through the incident. The video is 17 minutes long. At the conclusion of the press conference, a Spanish version will be available for the media to film, and both versions will be placed on YouTube sometime later today. We will then go into my findings, whether or not the deadly force was in conformance to the policies and procedures of the Omaha Police Department, as well as in adherence to our training. Third, Mayor Stothert will issue a statement, and then fourth, we will go to question and answer. So at this time, we're going to dim the lights and play the video presentation.
Hello, my name is Officer Michael Pekka with the Omaha Police Department's Public Information Office. The information and videos you are about are intended to provide, as we currently understand them, of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on February 3rd, 2024 in the parking lot of Saul's Jewelry and Loan at 3110 L Street. This video may contain graphic images which could be disturbing to some people. Viewer discretion is advised. After the nightclub had closed, a group of patrons were walking westbound through the Saul's Jewelry and Loan parking lot, at which time they were confronted by the driver and front passenger of a black Jeep Cherokee. The front passenger window of the black Jeep was down, and the driver of the Jeep Cherokee reached across the front passenger and pointed a handgun at the group of patrons and two Omaha police officers, Officer Robert Saldo and Captain Jay Levitt. The Omaha police officers were off duty and were employed by Ex-Stasis nightclub at the time. The driver of the Jeep Cherokee then fired one round at the group of officers. The officers then returned fire and the occupants of the Jeep Cherokee. The occupants of the Jeep were transported to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, where they later died. This incident began at Ex-Stasis nightclub located at 3050 L Street. In this surveillance video provided by Ex-Stasis, involved parties can be seen inside the nightclub. The involved parties are seen in the lower right corner of the video. The driver of the Jeep, identified as Fernando Rodriguez Juarez, age 26, is seen wearing a white t-shirt. The passenger of the Jeep, identified as Jonathan Hernandez Rosales, age 28, can be seen wearing a white ball cap with black Bulls emblem. This next video shows the interior entrance to Ex-Stasis nightclub as the bar is closing. In this video, you can see Mr. Rodriguez Juarez and Mr. Hernandez Rosales exiting the nightclub in close proximity to Captain Levitt, wearing a clearly marked Omaha police uniform. You can also partially see Officer Saldo, who is standing to Captain Levitt's right. The next video shows the exterior of Ex-Stasis nightclub. In this video, you can see Mr. Rodriguez Hernandez and Mr. Hernandez Rosales at the bottom of the screen. During this video, you can see the involved parties entering into an apparent verbal altercation with a group of individuals. This argument turns physical with pushing and shoving, with parties dispersing once they see Captain Levitt approaching using his flashlight. The next video shows the rear parking lot of Ecstasis nightclub. In this video, you can see Mr. Hernandez Rosales and Mr. Rodriguez Juarez running towards the black Jeep Cherokee, with Mr. Rodriguez Juarez getting into the driver's seat and Mr. Hernandez Rosales getting into the front passenger seat. The black Jeep Cherokee then proceeds southbound towards the entrance to the Ecstasis nightclub parking lot. During the subsequent crime scene investigations, detectives located Mr. Hernandez Rosales' vehicle, a black Toyota Camry, parked in the rear lot. The next video shows the black Jeep Cherokee exiting the Ecstasis parking lot and turning westbound onto L Street. At approximately 2:03 a.m., a group of patrons from the Ecstasis nightclub is seen in this video walking through the parking lot of Saul's Jewelry and Loan, located directly west of Ecstasis. This group contains some of the individuals involved in the prior physical altercation outside of Ecstasis. Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo are at the rear of the group of patrons, clearing the parking lot as part of their normal duties. Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo then react to the driver of the Jeep Grand Cherokee brandishing a handgun and pointing it in their direction. The next video shows the black Jeep Cherokee entering the west entrance of Saul's parking lot and stopping to confront the group. Mr. Rodriguez Juarez can be seen raising his right hand with what appears to be a handgun directly in front of the front seat passenger, Mr. Hernandez Rosales. The Jeep is then illuminated by the officer's flashlights. Captain Levitt is seen firing his weapon at the vehicle as Officer Saldo crosses in front of the Jeep and fires his weapon. The Jeep then accelerates and almost strikes Officer Saldo as it passes by the officers. Investigators have recovered several videos from Anytime Coin Laundry at 3120 L Street. This business is located directly to the west of Saul's Jewelry and Loan. The video you are about to see is of the interior of the business. You will hear a single gunshot at the 28-second mark, followed approximately 4 seconds later by the volleys fired by Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo. next video, also from Anytime Coin Laundry, shows the parking lot of Saul's Jewelry and Loan. In this video, you will see the group of patrons walking westbound and confronted by the black Jeep Cherokee. You will also see the reactions of Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo as they respond to the threat posed by the occupants of the black Jeep Cherokee. You will now hear a recording of some of Captain Levitt's radio traffic during the incident and the request for medical first responders to the scene.
1530 shots fired, 32nd male, Dennis Girls.
Unit revise. Call sign. That's clear, I'm pulling them up. I need this call sign.
Viva 1530. 1530, Tequila, 32nd male, shots fired. 488, suspect down.
Open officer. Open officer 320, helping officer 320, helping officer 320, shots fired. 204. 1 out of 51, 52, 53, 58, 1 out of 61, 1 Baker 55. I'll show you on route 151. 61 route 205.
1530, started for squad.
Squad's en route 205.
Captain Levitt is not assigned a body-worn camera as part of his normal duties as an Omaha Police Department precinct captain. Officer Saldo has an assigned body-worn camera and was wearing it at the time of the incident. However, it was not powered on at the beginning of the incident. Officer Saldo attempted to power on his BWC as the incident was unfolding and was able to capture the moments directly after the shooting. The next still photos are from Officer Saldo's BWC. They show the vehicle proceeding northbound down the alley on the west side of Saul's. The Omaha police officers are yelling numerous loud verbal commands for the vehicle to stop as it slowly proceeds north and comes to a stop against a green plastic utility box. The occupants do not respond to any of the repeated commands for them to exit the vehicle. Officer Saldo calls for a bullet-resistant shield in an effort to safely approach the vehicle and take the occupants into custody. Officer Saldo uses the shield and, along with backup officers, approaches the black Jeep, at which time the injured occupants are removed and provided medical attention by responding OPD officers and OFD medics. The investigation at the scene and subsequent round counts of the involved officers' handguns revealed that a total of 21 shots were fired by the officers. Captain Levitt fired 12 rounds from his handgun, and Officer Saldo fired 9 rounds from his handgun. The officers' handguns will undergo further forensic testing by the Omaha Police Department's Forensics Investigations Unit. Investigators recovered a 9mm Taurus G2C semi-automatic pistol from the front passenger floorboard of the black Jeep Cherokee. The handgun consists of a black polymer frame and white and silver aftermarket finished slide. In addition, a spent 9mm casing was located in the back seat of the black Jeep Cherokee. The location of the spent casing is consistent with the positioning of the handgun at the time it was fired, as if fired out of the front passenger window of the black Jeep Cherokee. This is consistent with the statements of both officers and an independent witness, indicating that a gunshot was fired from the black Jeep Cherokee during the incident. The Taurus handgun was loaded with an extended magazine containing 5 rounds of ammunition and 1 round in the chamber. The head stamps on both the ammunition in the handgun and the spent casing in the back seat were identical and not consistent with the spent casings fired by the officers during the incident. Both Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo provided voluntary statements to the Omaha Police Department officer-involved investigations team. Neither officer had seen any surveillance videos prior to their interviews. During their interviews, both involved officers made statements consistent with and which corroborate the video footage you have just seen. In addition, both Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo told investigators that they witnessed a gunshot being fired from inside the black Jeep Cherokee in the direction of the group of patrons in the Saul's parking lot. Investigators have conducted criminal history background checks on both involved parties. The driver, Fernando Rodriguez Juarez, has a minimal law enforcement contact history in Omaha. Immigration and Customs Enforcement reported that Mr. Rodriguez Juarez had a prior arrest in Shelby County, Iowa, during which his place of birth was recorded as Mexico. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services systems show no record of lawful entry or presence for a person by this name and date of birth. A search of DHS indices, including processing systems, international flight records, visa applications, and border entry records also found no records. The front seat passenger, Jonathan Steven Hernandez Rosales, is a citizen and national of Nicaragua who was encountered by the U.S. Border Patrol on August 3, 2022 at Eagle Pass. Records show he waded across the Rio Grande and entered the U.S. in contrast to immigration law. Hernandez Rosales was placed in removal proceedings and assigned to the ICE Alternatives to Detention program. On October 20, 2022, Hernandez Rosales was no longer required to participate in the ATD program. Hernandez Rosales' next immigration court hearing was scheduled for October 14, 2025. Per Omaha Police Department policy, the Mexican and Nicaraguan consulates were notified immediately after next of kin notifications were made on Saturday, February 3rd. Captain Jay Levitt is a 25-year veteran of the Omaha Police Department and commands the Northeast Precinct. Officer Robert Saldo is an 8.5-year veteran of the Omaha Police Department and is assigned to the Gang Suppression Unit. Multiple independent witness statements, numerous surveillance videos, and the statements of Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo verify the information provided in this critical incident briefing. Investigators from the Nebraska State Patrol and Douglas County Sheriff's Office assisted the Omaha Police Department officer-involved investigations team with this investigation per state statute. At the conclusion of the interviews of Captain Levitt and Officer Saldo, the Douglas County Attorney's Office was provided a full briefing on this incident with the facts known at this time. This incident is the subject of a criminal investigation to be reviewed by the Douglas County Attorney's Office and is also the subject of an administrative investigation. Conclusions about whether the actions of the officers are consistent with department policy and the law will not be made until all facts are known and the investigation is complete. Per Nebraska state statute, a grand jury will be convened to review this incident. This video was intended to inform and educate the public about a critical incident in our community. The Omaha Police Department, in partnership with our community, provides impartial, ethical, and professional law enforcement services and protection. We strive to maintain the trust and confidence of our citizens while working to improve the quality of life. Thank you for watching.
Okay, I'm going to give you a chance to acclimate your cameras towards the table. I'd like to move into the My Findings portion of our press conference. I want to note there's a poster board with the gun that was found in the vehicle. This is a portrait that was found in the suspect's phone, the driver's phone, so it's taken right from his phone. The immigration status of the deceased was archived only for background purposes. It is after the fact information and by no means can be used towards justification for an officer to fire their weapon. It is also not an investigative consideration. The reality was we knew the media would ask, so in the name of transparency, we provided it. I've received several pointed questions from community activists, either by phone or through a Zoom meeting yesterday. I appreciate the time with them. Out of respect for the community's questions, I want to reiterate some of them here publicly, as we did our best to answer them in the presentation. First question: how could two people die but only one gun was recovered? The driver's act of leaning over the passenger to fire out of the passenger window gave the distinct impression to Captain Levitt the passenger had a gun. Question number 2: how many bullets were fired? 21 total, 12 by Captain Levitt, 9 by Officer Saldo. Each of the deceased was struck 3 times. Was the gun found in the car used to fire a weapon in the parking lot? Yes. Audio, witnesses, shell casings, and officer statements support the driver fired a gun. In addition, stippling found on the neck and face of the passenger were consistent with the driver firing a handgun in close proximity to the passenger's face. Did the officers have probable cause to approach the vehicle? The officers were not looking to approach the vehicle at all. The officers were forced into acting upon the gunshot. Did Mr. Hernandez Rosales and Rodriguez Juarez understand and speak English? We are not fully sure, although one of them asked for an ambulance in English and the other had some English comments on social media. There was not time for verbal warnings at the time the shots were fired, and there were no gun defects to the rear of the vehicle. They were either in the side or in the front. The case was presented to the county attorney for a determination if any criminal laws were violated. The county attorney has determined the incident was legally justified. I must evaluate if the officer's shooting was within Omaha Police Department policy. I find the shooting to be within our policy, although I note the outcome was not at all what we wanted. As we know now, the passenger did not have a gun. The officer had to react to the gunshot and the gun pointed out of the passenger window. The act of the driver leaning over and firing the gun over the passenger gave Captain Levitt, from his vantage point, the perception the passenger had a gun and fired it at the crowd. The captain then responded according to policy and training in the protection of life, his and the crowd. I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Stothert for comments.
Sure, thank you, Chief. First of all, I do want to offer condolences to the families and friends of Mr. Rodriguez Juarez and Mr. Hernandez Rosales. Also, I really want to thank Chief Schmatter and the investigation team for collecting and documenting the video evidence in a very clear and transparent manner. And as the Chief said, it's intended to inform and educate the public. So thank you for that. I am confident that the investigation is following OPD policies and state law. Chief Schmatter has established a record of thoroughness and accuracy and accountability, and this investigation will be no different.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to turn to the question and answer setup. I'm going to take one question at a time. There's going to be a microphone passed around. If there isn't one, I want you to speak loudly. Say your name, say your affiliation of the news that you are with prior to that so everybody at home watching can hear it. And I do want to start with veteran reporters, Joe Jordan first, then I'll go to John Chapman second.
Thank you. Chief, is it clear then, in terms of the immigration issue, both those individuals were not here legally?
Both are in the United States illegally.
Secondly, had either officer ever fired their weapons in the line of duty before?
Captain Jay Levitt was involved in a previous officer-involved shooting, I believe last year. He was exiting a community meeting when he witnessed somebody firing upon a house with occupants inside. He took action at that time.
Officer Solo?
I'm not familiar. Officer Saldo has not been.
And one last one for me, sir. In terms of the incident at that moment in time, when the officers saw the handgun reaching across the passenger,
Right.
So what you're saying is that Captain Levitt felt, from what he saw, that the passenger may also have had a gun? Is that right?
He thought the passenger was leaning over with his left hand shooting. And that would be consistent with the driver who leaned over and shot in front of the passenger.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Chief, has this ever happened before where we've had an incident where two suspects were shot and killed at the same time?
In my time as chief, which is over 11 years now, this is the first time.
And one more question. What do you guys do for the officers who are involved in the shooting? Is there any type of counseling? Is there any type of, help for them to get over the incident?
Thank you for that question, John. When an officer goes through a critical incident, we'll place them on administrative leave. That's part of protocol. Prior to coming off administrative leave, they have to be cleared by a medical doctor and a psychological doctor. And then we provide peer support and counseling if prescribed by the doctor or requested by the officer. So to ensure that they're ready to come back to work, we take all of those measures. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Sir, I'm going to go to you right here.
Roger Haber, Channel 6. Is there any indication, Chief, on what the disturbance was earlier with the patrons of the bar?
Other than they exchanged a small amount of words inside the bar, exchanged more aggressive words outside of the bar, became more of a pushing and shoving match. As to the content of what they were saying and what they were arguing about, we don't know at this time. Okay, I will go to you next.
Molly Hudson with Channel 3. How many people, can you confirm how many people were in that parking lot when the Jeep pulled up?
I'd have to go back and look at the exact number, but we described it as a group. You had a group of people that the two deceased were in an argument with outside of the bar. So you had that group, and then you had Officer Saldo and you had Captain Levitt. So you had that collection of people that gunshot was fired towards. I'll get you next.
Chief, thanks for your time. Alex McClure, KPTV. Thank you for touching on the possible language barrier between the men and the officers. I wanted to follow up by asking, are your officers required to learn Spanish, and should there have been communication in Spanish from your officers to these men? I understand you said that there was not time, but I want to give you an opportunity to explain. Should Omaha police officers be required to give commands in Spanish when there's a language barrier?
Every officer that goes through the Omaha Police Department Academy is required to learn Command Spanish, and that's an abbreviated form so that they know how to communicate in times of crisis, put the gun down, put the knife down, those types of commands. Neither of these officers were Spanish-speaking officers. It is a protocol of the Omaha Police Department to try to have as many foreign language speakers as we can so that we can communicate with the public. I do want to reiterate, Alex, the communication was the gunshot. The officers had to react to that instantly. And there wasn't any time at that point to issue any command Spanish or anything of that nature. They had to respond instantly to the gunshot. Thank you. I'm going to go over here for a question.
Chief, as far as interaction now with the Hispanic community going forward, is this something you see having an impact on your relationship with that community, as well as what can be done to sort of remedy that situation?
Sure, I do think it's going to be an impact, and I think we've taken measures here to provide transparency and accountability to catapult us into the next phase of reestablishing and reinstilling the police community relations that we will have in our communities that are diverse. And in this particular situation, we want to do inroads and reach out, and we're willing to do so. Myself, I'll be meeting with a group representing Latinos, and we will meet Monday, and I'm going to give them an expanded explanation as to what took place here today and answer their questions fully. So that progression is definitely forefront in our minds and will take place.
Molly Ashford. Oh, sorry.
Hi, Molly.
Hi. With the Omaha World Herald. I'm wondering how long after the officers fired their weapons were medics allowed into the scene?
I think it took approximately 8 minutes because the officers did not want to approach. They had to wait for a shield to approach. The car was still running, and so that was approximately 8 minutes. Jeremy, do you know the exact time?
It's about right, 8 minutes.
And you said one of them asked for an ambulance in English, so did they have a conversation with the officers after?
They did not have a conversation with the officers. One of them yelled back, "I need an ambulance."
Okay. And when was the county attorney's office briefed?
County attorney's office was briefed either yesterday or late the day before.
Thank you.
Chief, do we have any idea where the suspect's bullet ended up? Was that ever recovered at the scene? And second part, was anybody hit by their bullet?
No one was hit by the suspect's round, and we have not recovered where that final destination was.
Chief Joe Jordan again, Newstown, Nebraska. You released still shots from the body-worn camera video, but not the video itself. Is there a reason for that?
When it's our body-worn camera video, state law really wants that. They have a prescribed manner in which they want it released, and that's after the grand jury. And so you'll see that after the grand jury, but it's communications with the suspect to exit the car, which they never did. So both individuals were extracted from the vehicle after the officers approached with the shield.
Just to be clear, so the video on the body-worn camera is after all the shooting is done?
It is.
Thank you.
Do I have any more questions today?
Chief, another follow-up, Alex McLean, KETV. Can you clarify which of the two men asked for an ambulance in English? Do you know which one?
It was the driver.
Chief, or I guess maybe Mayor Stuffer, will the city face any liability for the passenger's death or even the driver's death?
I think the chief should answer that.
So name and affiliation you're with, please.
Sarah Feely, KETV.
The question was, will the city face any liability for the passenger? Look, this is the criminal phase, the evaluation of policies and procedures phase. The next phase possibly is a civil litigation phase. That is an area that we don't have any control over. Certainly, a lawsuit could be filed upon that. I do know that during the course of our duties, when a threat is presented, there is some qualified immunity with police officers on that front.
Chief John Chapman, WWT. Does it make any difference that the officers were off duty?
It doesn't make any difference they were off duty as to the evaluation of this investigation, evaluation of whether or not that they were justified. Once they have to take law enforcement action of a felony response type of nature, they become on duty at that time.
Chief, you said that the county attorney has found that the shooting is legally justified, and you decide it's well within policy?
Yes, that is correct.
Would you consider this a close call in those decisions at all?
I don't. Once you reevaluate the evidence and you look at the deadly force situation and the deadly threat that these officers were facing, there was a crowd of people, a gun was fired into it in the aftermath of verbal altercations between two groups. The officers were justified in that.
Chief Roger Hamer, WWT. Is there any possibility of changing policy concerning off-duty officers working nightclubs and other places like that?
I'm not looking at changing the policies for the officers actually working. I think that's a necessity in our community. It's also a force multiplier, Roger, as we're struggling with staffing. The one thing I will look at is, the captain was high enough in rank that he's not assigned a body-worn camera, just like I'm not assigned one or any of the gentlemen on the stage here. I am going to look at making it a requirement, if you're not assigned one, to take one.
Chief, there have been calls from the community specifically in regards to Sarah Feely, KETV, in regards to Captain Levitt to maybe take a look at his reassignment or even a demotion that has been brought up in the community. Is that something you're looking at, or can you address his status going forward?
Well, the first thing I would say, those comments were made before you saw the evidence here today. And that's a strong point I want to make. On the first officer-involved shooting that Captain Levitt was involved in, he happened upon somebody attempting to kill somebody else. And you want your law enforcement officers to intervene at that point in time. On this particular officer-involved shooting, he's working off duty. He has to respond to a gunshot that's pointed at a crowd and him and Officer Saldo in their direction. That's what you want an officer to do, is respond. So at this point in time, I will say this. The scrutiny on Captain Levitt, because he's been in 2 officer-involved shootings, is unwarranted. Will we look at reassignments? Will we look at different locations for him to oversee? You know, we'll take a look at those things. But that's not something I'm prepared to talk about here as to what that outcome may be. Okay, seeing no more questions, I want to thank the media for coming. I want to thank the community for bringing questions to my attention. And I look forward to working with the community in the aftermath of this incident in order to reinstill police-community relations. When you have solid police-community relations in a police department, you have lower number of shootings, you have lower number of homicides, and you have lower number of officer-involved shootings. It's just an impressive way to do police work. Thank you, everybody.